While she's brainstorming how to save her job and come up with fun surprises for her husband, she finds Dan's secret cell phone. Clearly, Dan is having an affair. All the details line up. Hey friends, I'm Lane, doing something a little different today. I'm reading a chick lit book, which I feel like is not a term that is what's used as much anymore, or maybe not very many chick lit books are being written. It doesn't sound like a very nice term, but honestly, a lot of chick lit books are fantastic. Some of these books you might remember from the early O's were Bridget Jones' Diary and The Devil Wears Prada. The author I'm talking about today also had one of her books made into a movie in 2009, but the genre could also be considered like rom-com or just fun, lighthearted romances. The book that I read is called Surprise Me. It's by Sophie Kinsella and was printed in 2018. Sophie Kinsella is my very favorite chick lit author. She recently passed away just before Christmas 2025. Her real name was Madeline Wickham. She died too young, and it sounds like she was a really good and beloved person beyond the writing of her delightful books. Her stories are romances, but the romance is not the main plot of the story. Usually, the main character is dealing with a family problem or a work problem and overcoming personal issues in a creative way that ties into, but isn't solved by the romance. I could talk about her books all day, but I'll try to be brief. She was famous for the Shopaholic books. I've got 3 of them, but I think there's 9. That was one that was made into a movie in 2009. I also really enjoyed Can You Keep a Secret? I also really love the extremely unique chick lit ghost story, 20s Girl. I also recently read her sweet and heartbreaking fictionalized account of her real life experience with terminal cancer. What Does It Feel Like? Rest in peace, Sophie. Surprise Me is a rare romance that features a plot about a married couple with kids, which I loved. It was delightful to have a story that doesn't simply end with the characters getting together. The plot is that Sylvie Winter and her husband Dan are worried about their marriage, and they decide to come up with little surprises to keep the spark alive. Most of these surprises backfire hilariously. The dying rom-com industry really ought to make more Kinsella books into movies. But, like I said, that isn't the real plot of the story. And honestly, I wouldn't have included this in my review series if it was. I'm reviewing books about deconstruction, doubt, or attempts to propagate a belief. Romance books don't usually fit that category, even though that's what I'm attempting to write. Usually, when Christians talk about deconstruction, they are talking about leaving or radically changing their faith. This can be a slow process of taking apart something they've built up their whole life, like a tower of blocks. What needs moved around? What pieces don't fit anymore? What needs to be added? Or maybe the whole tower needs to be smashed. I don't know. Without including religion at all, Surprise Me is an amazing deconstruction story. Sylvie is sad about the sudden loss of her father 2 years ago. My father died in a car crash, I explain. Ah, Dr. Bamford's eyes dim in sympathy. But otherwise he was healthy? Oh yes, very, extremely. He was super healthy. He was amazing. I can't help it. I'm already reaching for my phone. My father was so handsome. Dr. Bamford needs to see, to realize. When I meet people who never knew my father, I feel a weird kind of rage almost, that they never saw him, they never felt that firm, inspiring handshake, that they don't understand what has been lost. He looked like Robert Redford, people used to say. He had that glow, that charisma. He was a golden man, even as he aged, and now he's been taken from us. And even though it's been 2 years, I still wake up some days, and for a few seconds I've forgotten, until it hits me in the guts again. Sylvie still hero worships her dad. She keeps her long, blonde, wavy hair down to her waist, like Rapunzel, because her dad said her hair was her glory. That's why I'm dressed up extra for you guys today. Her mom still worships Dad as well. Whenever Dan and Sylvie bring their 5-year-old twin daughters to Mummy's house, she plays the wedding video. Dan says it's weird to keep replaying one day of our life. In fact, Dan hates our wedding DVD, probably for the same reason that Mummy loves it. Because while most wedding videos are about the happy couple, ours is basically all about Daddy. This is going to come up a lot, by the way, sorry, but she is going to be an adult woman who keeps referring to her parents as Mummy and Daddy. And I do think there's some symbolism going on there about her having a bit of a childish outlook toward her parents. But I really notice it when I'm reading it out loud and I keep saying, Daddy, Daddy, over and over again. And it sounds a little weird to me. I never even noticed to begin with. I thought it was just a lovely, well-produced DVD. It wasn't until about a year after our wedding that Dan suddenly flipped out on the way home from some gathering and said, "Can't you see, Sylvie? It's not our DVD, it's his." Sylvie doesn't like confrontation, but she tried to talk to her mom about it. "I do not," says Mummy empathetically. "The DVD represents the spirit of the wedding perfectly, and like it or not, your father was the center of the party." Naturally, the videographers chose to focus on the most entertaining character present. "Poor Dan is a lovely chap. You know I love him to bits, but he's hardly the life and soul, is he?" Sylvie's relationship with her dad is a source of tension between her and Dan. She thinks she knows why. Dan is jealous. Dan resents that his wife grew up with money and he can't provide the same things. Dan is worried about her having another episode, like when her dad died. But we weave through the various misunderstandings in the book until we find out the truth that Dan was keeping from her. But wait, before I tell you what that is, Sylvie goes through 2 deconstructions in this book. The first is about her dad. The second is about her job. She works for a small historical home museum that is so quirky they use a fax machine, don't have a website, and can't talk about money. Even though Sylvie's job is partially about fundraising. The boss positively forbids us from asking for donations first. Her argument is, the longer you've known the patron, the more they'll give when the time comes. So, she takes donors out to expensive meals, buys generous gifts for volunteers, and follows all the funny museum customs about organizing and boxes. Sylvie wears floral dresses and shoes with bows to work, and she's given up on trying to modernize the museum. She's content until the boss's nephew comes crashing into their reality. He explains, the museum has been broke for years, and their elderly boss has been supplementing it with her own money. If they can't make the museum work financially, they're going to shut it down. While she's brainstorming how to save her job and come up with fun surprises for her husband, she finds Dan's secret cell phone. Clearly, Dan is having an affair. All the details line up. Still, not being good at confrontation, when she tries to press him on it, he packs up and goes away for a weekend. Sylvie is completely brokenhearted. But when she goes to confront the other woman, things don't make sense anymore. The other woman is actually a lawyer working for Mummy and Dan, trying to keep Daddy's character from being defamed. Despite Mummy's protestations, the lawyer explains everything. Sylvie's fond childhood memories are rewritten with the truth. At their summer home, her dad had an affair with a 16-year-old girl. The UK age of consent laws is different than the US, I guess. Yikes. Mummy says it's libel, but Sylvie reads through the details carefully. Although Sylvie was only 4, she remembers the 16-year-old Lynn who played with her and was so kind to her. Her parents told her for years, Lynn wasn't real. She was your imaginary friend. Don't talk about Lynn anymore. Now, Lynn became famous as an adult and wrote a book about all the struggles she had overcome. The family, with Dan's help, persuaded her to leave Daddy out of the book. But now she's writing a second book, and she's refusing to hide the truth again. Sylvie is shocked at the idea of her perfect dad grooming a teen girl. How could he? But the details of the story make sense. And she becomes horrified as she reads the emails between her dad and her husband. So I hastened on to the emails, the present-day correspondence, the actual case. There are hundreds of emails in the files, thousands even. Daddy to Dan, Dan right back to Daddy, Roderick to both of them, Dan to Mary, Mary back to Dan. The more I read, the more shocked I am. Daddy's emails are so abrupt, demanding, entitled. Dan is resolutely polite, resolutely charming, but Daddy pushes him around. He expects Dan to drop everything. He swears at him when things go wrong. He's a bully. Sylvie talks to her mom, and this time she is brave. What about Dan? I say flatly. Dan? Mummy crinkles her brow, as though perhaps she's forgotten who Dan is, and I feel another flare of anger at her. Dan, who's been working his socks off for you. Dan, who's in Devon right now trying to protect Daddy's name. Again. Dan, who is the hero in all this, but you treat him like, I flounder, like a joke. I'll calm down when you treat my husband with respect. You were just as bad as Daddy. I saw his emails to Dan, and they were rude. Rude. All this time, we've been behaving as though Daddy's the saint. Daddy's the star. Well, Dan is the star. He's the star, and he hasn't had any recognition, any thanks. You sat here in this very room, I continue, and you said, Dan's hardly the life and soul, is he? Well, he is the life and soul. My voice gives a sudden wobble. He's the genuine life and soul, not flashing around, not showing off, but being there for his family. You've underestimated him. I've underestimated him. Tears prick my eyes. And I can't believe how Daddy just took him for granted. Swore at him. Treated him like... She never gets to have a moment where her mom understands. Mummy wants to live in her bubble, but Sylvie is empowered now. Dramatically, she cuts off her long hair in Mummy's living room. Dan hasn't answered his phone this whole time, so Sylvie goes back to work. She wears a black pantsuit with her new short hair. In all the time I've worked for Willoughby House, I've never put myself out like I have today. I've never pitched so much, or cajoled so much, or talked so passionately to so many people. And now I'm wondering, what have I been doing all this time? I feel like I've been sleepwalking for years, doing everything according to Mrs. Kendrick's way. Even in these last few weeks, even knowing we were under threat, I didn't strike out boldly enough. I didn't challenge anything. I didn't change anything. You see why I feel like this is a deconstruction book? Amazing. Then Dan finally comes back, and she gets to thank him. This isn't an author who uses a lot of swear words, but she tells Dan in public, I know my father was a liar and a shit. So like I said, this is a book about deconstruction after all. Sylvie built herself around her dad, from her long princess hair to her facade of a job. She didn't ask questions or consider alternatives. She simply settled. When he died, she felt like her world was ending. She grieved, but it was unresolved. Finding out that he shouldn't be the center of her world is upsetting, but ultimately, Sylvie realizes that his memory was actually standing in the way of what she wanted in life. Her husband Dan is forced into growth as well. For so long, his world was focused on this belief that he needed to protect Sylvie, and he came close to losing her over it. I don't have room to tell the whole story. Really, you should go read it. I know this isn't just my weird brain making connections. Think how often a pastor or a priest has done something awful, and they aren't held accountable. Same thing with politicians and famous people. Churches believe in forgiveness, but that's not what's happening here. It's worship of a leader and fear of change. People cling to their power, and followers let them get away with it. I don't care if it's a religion, government, media, entertainment, or a family. There's a better way forward. We don't have to cling on to a leader or a belief. And think about how unstable that makes the world. If a person has a belief system that's like a stacked tower, and all of that is balancing and teetering on their youth group leader's sermon from 10 years ago, it doesn't take much for that whole tower to crash and fall. If there were some good pieces in there, maybe they get lost in the mess forever. My church community growing up had a lot of beliefs that acted like a wobbly foundation. If evolution is real, God is not. God is love, but God will let people be tormented in hell for all eternity. People choose to be gay, so we can ignore the golden rule of treating others how you'd like to be treated. I would love to know if you have any book recommendations for me. This one might be a very rare situation, but I'm open to a lot of fiction stories about deconstruction. We've also been reading post-apocalyptic stories and romances and seeing if any of those things overlap in interesting ways. Thanks for watching.